Chantal Roberts, and I'm a nationally recognized insurance thought leader regarding claims handling practices and procedures. Today on The Art of Adjusting, we're talking with Nancy Germond. Nancy has a lot of initials behind her name, which means that she's super duper smart. She has developed training and marketing materials for carriers, agents, and vendors in the insurance marketplace. She's also taught a certification, excuse me, class in, I guess it's an Arizona Community College
Mhm.
for how to be an adjuster, which is what I'd like to talk about now. Welcome, Nancy.
Welcome. Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Good. I'm so glad you could make it because I love talking about adjusting, of course. But
Well, so do I. We're
full
biased.
dis- I know, aren't we? Full disclosure for our viewing audience, and there is none actually. We've collaborated on a couple of articles before, and we know some of the same people, like Kevin Quinley, and we've already talked trash about him, off record. And I'll totally deny everything because we didn't record it. Uh, which is, of course, how I first heard about you from his podcast. And at that time, you were teaching classes, like claims classes, like how to be an adjuster. And my question is, why does anyone want to be an adjuster? And why were your students studying to become adjusters?
Well, I think at that time, that was before I was teaching at the community college, and we were teaching an AAS program or a certificate program in insurance, but I was working for Vail, and that's one of the oldest adjusting schools in the nation. In fact, probably the maybe older than GAB, which has closed. But it's such a great profession. And, one of the things that I think that workers' comp carriers are missing out on is when we get seriously injured employees is retraining them, those that are in construction that can't go back to manual lifting, manual labor. But they know the basics of construction. They know how to, frame. They know how to hang drywall. Well, they could easily transition. But it's a great career for men and women. I started out in the industry because my parents were insurance agents, so I knew all the vernacular and I knew how to type. And that was all it took, of course, to get a job. And my parents warned me not to go into claims. My mother told me it was the worst end of the industry, but she
It's
didn't
the
use
dark
that
side.
word.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, she
yeah.
used a real specific word for a person who didn't curse. And of course, as soon as she said that, I thought, well, I better check it out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
If your parents
So,
don't want you to do it, then you just totally
right.
have to do it. Right. Yeah. A couple of stories actually. My stepson um, would come over to work while after school, and I think the first words he learned was, "Your claim is denied." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm so proud of you." And plaintiff attorneys, if you're watching this, I'm joking. Don't take that against me. And it's so true what you said about retraining employees. When I was a claims manager, I took a lot of people with what I called translatable skills, like a journalist.
Mhm.
And what do claims adjusters do? Well, they take a bunch of pieces of information and they put them into a story, and that's what a journalist does. And then they apply the policy.
Right.
So, yeah, there's so many things that you think aren't translatable or transferable skills for an adjuster, but really are.
When I worked for Industrial Indemnity back in San Francisco back in the day, some of the best reports were coming out of this private adjusting firm, an independent adjusting firm in Los Angeles. And one day he flew up from LA to take a bunch of us to lunch back in the day when you could do that without it being, looked down upon.
Right.
And I asked him, how do you write such great reports? And he said, oh, simple. We hire out of work screenwriters,
Mhm.
and our adjusters go do their investigation. They write, the bullet points, and then a screenwriter wrote the reports.
That's a genius. That's
Isn't that
genius.
hilarious?
That is very funny. What do
Yep.
you think the best part about being a claims adjuster is? Because both you and I love being claims adjusters.
Well, there's probably a couple things. First, you get to set your own hours if you're an independent or adjuster, or me and you as a consultant. I like to work kind of weird hours, and that's part of it. But what I saw in the beginning is that I didn't want to sit behind a desk my whole career. And I knew a lot of, I always say I'm a mile wide and about 2 inches deep, right? So I knew a lot about trucking, a lot about construction. I married into a plumbing dynasty, all of those kind of things. So I knew that I could use a lot of my different skills, and I just kept learning and learning. Also, it's where the men were, and I knew men made more than women did, and still do. And so I thought that claims was where, exactly where I wanted to be. The salaries were pretty good and the benefits were good. So,
Yeah, I would say, and that's one of the things that I talk about when I go to universities and say, please come over to the dark side, because I realize that your risk management and finance majors, and they're only teaching you how to be agents. But trust me on this, the claims people get paid really well too, and you get to help people at their worst times in their lives, like when their house is flooded or their car is wrecked or something like that.
and,
What would you? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, I was going to say when I ran a workers' comp unit, the one thing I told my adjusters again and again is that you are more social workers than you are adjusters. At some point, if there's a discrepancy or a fact pattern that's an issue, you've got to put on your thinking cap and you've got to throw the sociology out. But for the most part, you're there to help people. They're probably experiencing one of the worst things they've ever been through in their lives, and they're emotional, and you're a target, and you have to kind of be the wave that allows them to dump on you to the point that you build some trust with them.
Right. I think you just answered my next question, which was, what's the worst part of it?
Mm.
And it is kind of the fact that um, we get yelled at a lot.
Hmm.
And in fact, not to plug myself, but I'm totally going to plug myself. I'm writing a book. And one of the things that I write about is the fact that you as an adjuster are going to get yelled at. You're going to get sued.
Hmm.
You're going to have an insurance complaint against you. Just get over it. And here's how to handle it. Of
Right.
course, I mean, I'm just not throwing you off to the wolves, but yeah, I think that's part of the worst part. What would you say is some of the worst part of being an adjuster?
Well, if you want to know the truth, it's that we are the tail that wags the dog, and we're very disrespected in the industry.
Yeah,
And I'll
yeah.
give you a perfect example. I worked for an excess surplus lines carrier, and we put together the first training program that I could find in the United States. It was a 4-hour training on coverage B under the CGL. And the basics basically, we wanted adjusters to be able to, if they were handling coverage B, advertising, personal injury, those types of things, evictions, all the things that generate coverage B claims. I wanted them to be able to, number one, recognize, oh, this is a coverage B claim and it's either beyond my scope or I know enough now to be dangerous. So with a little help from a mentor in the office, I can handle this. And we ended up winning a national award. We won the Markovich Society of Insurance Trainers one yearly award, and it never got brought up in the all hands on deck meeting. And which
Really?
was like, oh yeah, it was like, yeah, underwriting did this year, and marketing
Mm.
did this year, and claims, oh there you are, and
Yeah. You spent a lot of money this year, is what the
exactly.
claims department
That's
did.
it. We
Yeah.
don't bring
Hmm.
in money, and so we are.
Yes.
Yeah, so we
Hmm.
unfortunately we are not given the respect that we deserve. And then, of course, 20 years ago, the MBAs came in and started
Hmm.
slicing and dicing and cutting legal fees and parsing everything, and to the point where, some we lost a lot of stellar legal talent because they just won't put up with it anymore.
Hmm.
So that's some of the worst. And you try not to take those things personally because, I knew I did a good job and I know I'm probably hands down an excellent adjuster, but it's hard year after year to be overlooked.
Yeah, I think it is. One of the things that I don't think the ivory tower bean counters really take into effect or take into consideration is if they would properly staff a claims department, it could actually end up not being a loss leader because
Absolutely.
when you look at subrogation or when you look at salvage, look at cutting or overlooking the vendor fee bills or something like that, you can, or you look at the estimates even, you can end up having a good tight sheet, for example, rather than having your adjuster so overworked that they look at the bottom line and they go, yep, let me write a check for that and close it really quickly.
Exactly. Well, and
So I
it's
think
all
it's,
caseloads.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Um, and what do your students think? What do they think, was the best part or the worst part of being a claims adjuster? Or did they ever come back and tell you?
Oh yeah, we talked a lot about it because a lot of mine were field adjusters, and so they were in places. Funny story: two of our my students, one of them was up on a roof with another adjuster in Detroit after the 2008 crash, and they were up on the third floor, and some drug addict or something came along and stole their ladder, and
Oh
they ended up. He had to.
no.
I said, "Why didn't you call the police?" He said, "We were in Detroit. They're not going to come
Yeah,
help us, right?
for a
They're a little
ladder.
busy."
Yeah.
So he had to call his manager from out of a neighboring state who had to drive into Detroit to bring them a ladder and get them off the roof.
Oh my
And, you know, there's a lot of danger in field work today. You know, we had during the one of the hurricanes, I can't remember which one, we had a field female adjuster murdered in Florida. She was I can't remember I think USAA or AAA. I can't remember which carrier she worked for. So there is some danger associated. And, you know, I cut my teeth doing field work, and I always had to check in and out with somebody so that somebody knew where I was going. If I didn't feel comfortable, I'd say, well, let's sit a spell on the porch. I've been in houses that, you know, with dirt floors and cockroaches, I left with cockroaches in my purse, you know, from all the way from that to, you know, multi-million dollar homes. So it's just so exciting, but it's hard. It's a hard life and long hours and little appreciation.
Yeah. We just talked about this because I have long railed, like I said, against the risk management degrees in universities for not having more claims focused courses, and I really don't know why that is. But besides the fact that, like we said, claims appears to be the outflow, or at least everybody assumes that claims is the outflow of money instead of being the promise keepers of the
Mhm.
policy. I mean, because
Mhm.
that's where the rubber meets the road, is in the claims department. So you'd think if you want to invest in anything, it would be the claims department, because that's where you're going to have the customer satisfaction. Why
I'm
do you think
writing
that the
I'm
uh,
writing that down, the promise keepers. I may steal
oh
that.
yeah, oh yeah, you're more than welcome to it. It's trademarked. You'll have to give me like a 10% royalty fee. I'm going to call my trademark attorney right after this. Note to self. But why do you think that no one pays attention to the claims department?
Well, here's the deal. Most of the professors who teach in insurance definitely are not claims people. I think
Hmm.
when I look at the Maricopa Community College District and Grand Canyon College here has now got a risk and finance degree, and Maricopa is still teaching the AAS or the AINS designation through the college. It's underwriting people, it's marketing people. I'm
Mhm.
probably the only claims person teaching that I know of. And so why a lot of my students went into claims is because I talked about how great it was. And I think it's you know, I saw it as a perfect career path for females,
Yeah.
because when it comes to can I go estimate this house? Can I run an exactimate? You know, everything balances out. But what women have sometimes that men don't is that we have really usually stellar communication skills. And so a lot of times, you know, we can get things resolved in mediation that sometimes you're like this, and we can
Right.
come in very often and say, you know what, I'm so sorry this happened to you, because part of mediation is putting a face on the insurance company. And
Absolutely.
and I think women are stellar at that. I do know some men that I've learned a lot from, but very, very strong female adjusters that I've worked with.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. What do you think a person should study or should do if he or she wanted to become an adjuster? Because, like I said, and like we've talked about, there are no claims classes. In fact, I've been dinged. I'm in as an expert in one case here, and opposing counsel's trying to throw me out by not studying claims, and so I replied to retaining counsel. I'm like, there are no claims classes. They don't exist. I mean, maybe the AIC, but
Right,
which
the
I have.
AIC.
I mean,
Yeah.
which I have, but other than that, there are no college courses for claims adjusters or anything like that. So what do you think a person should do if they want to get into this career field?
Well, I think the most important thing is that you have critical thinking skills. And so, honestly, if you're getting a BA or an AA degree or an AS or a BS, that you should work on taking a philosophy class
Sorry
or,
about the BS.
yeah, well, we both have that. We have that
Well,
going
that's
for
probably
us.
every adjuster, to be honest
Yeah,
with you. I mean, if they
so
graduated from college or not. But
yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, what you definitely want those critical thinking skills. So any class like a philosophy class that you can take, anything that will build your ability to think critically and understand fact patterns, be able to be a debate class would be great. I was a communications major with a minor in sociology, and then I went on and got a master's in sociology, which I always laugh and say the only two things you can do with a master's in sociology is teach and pontificate, and I do both. So,
Yeah, and
but
that's what expert witnesses do, I think.
yeah, but it allows me to understand other cultures because America's changing, and this is why we see so much dis-ease in the country because it's changing so rapidly. And we have to be conversant with, number one, you're selling your policy. Your underwriters better be selling the policy to a diverse population. You have to be able to understand and, you know, speak culturally appropriately to a diverse population. The other thing
Absolutely.
is, if you can take a language, you're going to be that much farther ahead, whether it's
Absolutely.
Spanish or Mandarin or
Mm.
whatever.
Right.
Um, I that's the one thing that I have not spent as much time is improving my Spanish as I should. So,
Yeah, there are so many the needs for Spanish speakers
hmm
when we were, uh, or when I was handling truck driving claims out
hmm
in, semi tractor trailer rigs out in
right,
California. There are quite a bit Vietnamese speakers.
right, and
Up in the
hmm
Detroit area,
hmm
you'll get the Russian speakers or the
yep,
Slavic speakers, and so you always needed to have translators. But
yep.
you're absolutely right about the need for critical thinking. You have to have the ability to say self, does this make sense? Because as I point out to the attorneys when they ask me, why do you think this person did such and such and such and such, or why is this wrong or whatever, I'm like, look, we're adjusters. We adjust things. We're not data entry clerks. If we were, we would be called data entry clerks.
Right,
And so we should be able to do that give and take a little bit.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. One
Yeah.
of the things I always teach, if I'm going to be teaching almost any semester long class at the community college, I take a day and teach a short critical thinking class. And some of the things that are interesting is today's kids have a really hard time even understanding, okay, what's a fact and what's an opinion. So we
Right.
start there, looking at, okay, the A's are the greatest baseball team in history. Is that a fact or an opinion? Well, I think it's a fact because that's what I believe. No, no, that's an opinion.
Right.
So let's
Right.
look at
Right.
that. So sometimes, and so many of our younger workers get the knocks for coming into the workforce, and they don't have we're teaching remedial skills because that's
Mm,
what they're getting in their high schools and colleges.
right.
So, we take our workforce as we find them, but we have to do that some some brush up training on communication, on letter writing.
Mhm.
So the other thing is any writing classes you can take.
Yeah.
And, English, certainly English 101 and certainly 102, where they're correcting your grammar and, you know,
Mm.
looking at
Yeah.
how you write. So
Because
those,
writing is a major, major skill as an adjuster. Do you think that you don't write a lot, but all of your claim notes are written and they need to be clear and concise,
and yeah, and
as well as
non-inflammatory.
your, yeah, 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 as well as your letters. Um,
And we've seen court decisions ruled on whether or not the semicolon was in the right
Oh,
place.
absolutely. Yeah. If it's
So,
the Oxford comma or not the
uh-huh,
Oxford, and
yeah,
I'm team Oxford right
no,
there. I love team. I know you're not, but I
no,
am.
yeah,
You have taught me the single space after the period thing. I
oh,
finally,
finally.
I finally crossed over to that. But I am not giving up on the Oxford comma. I do agree with the courts that it means something different. So I'm sticking to it, and that's my story.
That's good.
Um, but mentioning about the critical thinking, what I used to tell my baby adjusters was something that would really cause them to scratch their head a lot, and that is there are three sides to a coin. You've got your head and your tails, and then the side that you spin it on. And
Yeah.
then they're like, oh, and I'm like, yeah. So don't think that there's just right or wrong or the insured versus the
Mhm.
claimant, or something like that. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle.
In the middle.
Um,
Exactly.
because there's three sides to a coin. So there's probably three sides to a story. Um,
Absolutely.
but I know that you're really busy. So I want to thank you for your time. Is there anything that you want to plug or promote? Because I know that you've got a book coming out. You want to tell us all about your book?
I do. I'm kind of excited about it,
I'm
actually.
excited
It's
too. I hate
been
workers' comp, but I'm excited about it.
well, and this is workers' compensation in 2 hours. So what it
Oh,
does is
wow.
it guides the middle market insured who usually, number one, can't find an agent who could help with EMOD control management.
What's
Probably
EMOD?
can't the experience modification, which is
Okay.
comparing that organization's claims history with a like type of organization. So if it's a
Okay.
plumber, how many injuries do other plumbers have?
I see.
And
Okay.
it has a big impact on your premium.
Mm,
So what this does is in 2 hours, it goes through the entire workers' compensation program from hiring to uh, putting together a first report of injury to working with your claims adjusters in a collegial manner to get claims handled. And then, of course, it kind of goes through the policy a little bit. So it's going to go, Wells Publishing is putting it out. So I'm pretty excited about it.
wonderful. That's
Yeah.
so exciting. Very exciting. When is it supposed to come out?
I'm not sure yet. It just
Oh,
went in last week, so they haven't
okay.
given me a drop dead date. So we're kind of,
Still out there.
I should know soon.
Oh,
So,
good. Well,
but
that is very exciting.
one of the interesting things is I've had some agents reach out to me to say, I don't know enough about workers' compensation, so I'm anxious to read your book. So,
Congratulations. That's
yeah.
fantastic. That is fantastic. Anything else that you would like to plug?
No, I think things are doing well here in Arizona, and I love what I do. Every day is different, slightly different. I do some marketing material for adjusters or for various vendors, and I think I'll be doing a lot more workers' comp consulting coming
Yeah.
soon.
Well,
So,
great.
yeah,
Nancy, I want to thank you again for your time. I
and
appreciate
thank
you talking
you.
with us. Thank you.
Okay.
This
Yeah.
week, I spoke with Nancy Germond, a terrific trainer for the insurance marketplace. Every claim is different, and every insurer handles claims with different protocols. However, this being in the litigated world that we're in, see below for some legalese. Few claims go to a jury trial, and picking the expert who has been deposed the most or who has gone to trial the most may not be the correct expert. Failing to have a second set of eyes on a claim in order to save some expenses isn't always the best way to resolve a loss. As an expert witness and a former claims adjuster, I'm sharing my experiences in the art of adjusting. Thanks for listening. I appreciate your time.